Okay, we'll get underway. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining the first of a series of webinars from Grow New Zealand Business in 2021. And all of our webinars are designed around helping business owners maximise their business value, which normally is through profitable revenue growth. Now, I'm delighted today that Megan Bryce is presenting from Integrity Solutions. In my corporate life and also as a business owner, I've had many people come to me with these secrets of selling. And a lot of them have been interesting and not necessarily aligned with the values of our organisation or the values around building a long-term sustainable business. To be fair, some of them are about high pressure and some tactics that aren't overly great. And that's where Integrity Solutions is totally different. I don't want to give too much more away because I'll take away from Megan's presentation, but thank you for joining us today, Megan, and over to you.
Thanks, Jamie, and I've really enjoyed our partnership and love supporting Grow New Zealand members, so I really appreciate the opportunity. So today what we thought was we'd have a chat around selling, and I'd share some insights that have been passed on to me by the founder of Integrity Solutions, Ron Willingham. I was lucky enough to know him personally. He passed away a few years ago in his late 80s. And he basically dedicated his life to understanding the drivers that cause people to be successful in their work life, also in their personal life. And he had a particular passion for sales. He loved selling himself, and he had to overcome his own personal hesitations in order to be successful in sales. And so hopefully you'll find some of these insights really helpful. When we talk about we were talking to clients about the gaps that they may have in their sales, then we tend to find that there are some common themes that they have. And so I thought I'd cover three core topics, and those are to identify a sales process that you can follow, like a sales roadmap. Now, why would we need a sales process, when every person is different? Well, what we find is that if you need to achieve a destination, then it's good to have a roadmap so that you know how to get there. And also, if you take a wrong turn, then it's really helpful to be able to go back and see, well, where am I now? Where did I go wrong? And how do I course correct so that I can still achieve the destination? And so we find that having a sales process is really helpful. It gives managers a coaching formula. And it helps give consistency in language in a company, gives confidence that you're following some sort of a conversation system, and can be very helpful. The other thing that we find is that people can have difficulty with different personalities. So they can be comfortable with some people, but not so comfortable with others. And so we find that it's really helpful to look at how can I identify the personality of the person that I'm interacting with and adapt my style so that I can develop quicker rapport and greater empathy with that person. So we'll have a look at that as well. And then thirdly, we find that there are some real mental barriers to selling. People have a wide range of views as to what selling really is. And so we've got 5 barriers that we talk about that affect people emotionally and therefore can really be like an energy short circuit to their success when it comes to selling. So, but before we get further into the detail of those, just want to talk a little bit about Integrity Solutions so that you have some confidence that we know what we're talking about, and that the company Integrity Solutions, which is founded by Ron Willingham, the real unique aspect of it is that the main focus is on these attitudes, values, emotional factors that drive success, and combined with a strong behavior change process. So we find that a lot of people will go to a seminar or go to a workshop and they'll go away from it, and then by the next day they can hardly remember anything that was said. So we believe that you need discovery learning or experiential learning, and that people are far more apt to learn from what they experience for themselves than from what they are told or what they read. So we make sure that we hold people in accountability practice mode, usually for 2 months, for 8 weeks, and we run 8 weekly sessions to keep track of people and help hold them in some sort of a practice process. Integrity Solutions is continuing to research into sales effectiveness. Luckily for us and for our clients, our programs were already online by the time we had our COVID crisis, so we were able to continue pretty much as normal. And interestingly, a lot of our clients have said that their people find that training virtually, they can prefer it. They can feel more comfortable, they're in a safe environment, and that they contribute a lot more in the breakout sessions and get a lot more out of it. So that's interesting. And the company's been around for about 50 years, around 30 years. We've been working with clients in Australia and New Zealand. And so we've been working for some time, helping people with their sales effectiveness. Around 3 million graduates now from around the world. So, and we train a lot of facilitators as well so that they can run the programs internally, which can save them on facilitation money and also ensures that they're customizing the program for their people. And lastly, we're results focused. So we don't do training for training's sake. We make sure that people get the results that they want. So if they're looking for increased sales, then we make sure that they get increased sales. And we always do. So we have some great results that occur as a result of people doing the training. It really is an investment by leaders. So the next diagram just shows why we think that the programs work so effectively, and that we're not just focusing on skills. And so when you are training your people as well, it's good to be listening and thinking about for yourself, what are your attitudes and your values and your beliefs about that particular topic that are really driving your behavior. So you want some good skills, but you also want to understand the beliefs that are causing the productivity differences that you often see in salespeople and anybody in your team. And then we, as I mentioned, we hold people in that discipline process so that they can practice, get feedback, and learn vicariously from each other as well. So it's not just their own experience, but it's also the experience of all the other people who are going through the program that they can learn from. And this gets you a sustainable behavior change and results. So just going on to the next slide, Jamie, keeping up there. Thanks for driving the slides. So our focus is that we're really looking at how do we help our clients obtain more customers? How do we help them retain their customers and grow profitable revenue? And a lot of that revenue comes from their existing clients as well. So it's how can you help your existing customers even more than perhaps you may have before? So for example, we had an engineering company on our program recently, and one of the guys was an account manager, and he was doing the rounds and doing a great service job with his clients. But after realizing that he could ask some more questions, which would help the customer think about more problems that they may need to solve and that possibly he could partner with them to solve. And the customer said, well, I don't suppose that you can provide this particular piece of machinery, do you? And he said, well, yes, we do actually. And the customer didn't even realize. So he managed to get a $75,000 additional revenue sale by helping that customer even more and identifying further problems that they had. So focusing mostly on sales performance, on helping managers coach, do one-on-one coaching, and customer service. And we really see that sales and service are intertwined. So if you're going to be able to be a highly effective person when it comes to customer service, then that also means that you're good at helping solve customers' problems and good at selling them other products and services. So a few results that we have, you can see that there's some transformational change that occurs when people go through the programs, retention of staff, and cross-selling other services to clients and customers, productivity gains, and just deepening relationships as well. So for our banking and finance clients, they're looking at, often they use the term share of wallet. And so like how many services can we help our customers with? And they may have more needs than what we've actually discovered that they need help with. So let's talk about the sales process to start. And if you Google, excuse me, sales processes, you will find several readily available ones there. So when I Googled, there are a couple sort of came up first. So this is a 7-step sales process. 7 steps is quite common. So you're prospecting, you're qualifying, that you're speaking to the right people, you're understanding their needs. Then you're doing a demo, providing a proposal, closing the business if it's appropriate, following up, getting repeat business, and so on. So that's a good model. And then it was interesting to see that Grant Cardone's 5-step model was on there as well. So he is an amazing marketer, and he's sales training. So he's got a 5-step process of greet, do your fact finding, do your demo, a proposal, and then close. So you can see that there's a bit of a common theme here. But what I like about the Integrity Solutions sales process, that there's some nuances in it which I think can be very helpful. So you can just build up the whole thing there, Jamie, if you like. And so for people to retain a process, it's very helpful. There's a couple more actually there, Jamie. People find it very helpful to use an acronym, which is using the first letter of a word, of a series of words that form some kind of word that you can remember. So our acronym is AIDINC, and that reflects our sales process. And so I thought I'd share it with you because I find that it's really helpful. And it doesn't matter how big the company is, the type of customer, the type of industry, that people still find this really valuable and get really quite committed to it. So let me just explain the infographic and the process. So first of all, you've got your planning. Now, people are doing a lot more selling virtually these days. And so planning is even more important because you've got less visual information available to you rather than if you're visiting somebody. It's always essential to plan anyway. So try to find out as much as you can about the customer so that you are prepared in terms of the types of questions that you might want to ask and the information that you think that they may need. They're often doing their own preparation and they often know a lot about you. So they may have researched and got quite a good understanding about the offerings in your industry. So the first step is the approach step, which is building rapport. So first of all, we need to get trust and rapport with people. The second step is the interview, which is where you're doing your fact finding and you're understanding what people's wants and needs are before you're assuming about what they want and need. Now, there's two reasons for doing this. One is for yourself, but the other reason is also for your customer. And we had a client that made a great comment. He said that the interview is really the first sale that you make, or it's your main product, in fact, that you're selling initially. And that when customers are taken through an insightful interview process, which demonstrates that you are professional, you know what you're talking about, you've done your homework and so on, then they're buying into you. And by your questions and your interesting diagnostic process, then they're starting to think about their problems and their concerns and in a way that perhaps they hadn't even thought about before. And so they're finding that the interview in itself is of high value. So already you're providing value just through your interview process. Then once you've identified and you've got agreement between the two of you on what the needs and problems are that you may be able to solve, then you're able to demonstrate how your products and services fit or fill their wants and needs. Now, validate, that's a little bit creative in terms of the I, because we didn't take the V. We took the I out of the middle of validate to create the acronym. And that's like a floating step that all the way through the process, you're validating or backing up your claims so that people can trust you. So you're proving that what you say is correct by using testimonials or statistics or research or whatever it may be. Then in terms of negotiate, this is not a combative process. This is literally just simply finding out, are there any further barriers or problems or concerns that the person may have that may stop them from wanting to buy? And so you really want to flesh those out and work those through so they don't come out later. And then if everything looks good, then you'll find that people are usually saying, well, when can we start? Or they're asking about the process of how they use your product and service. So then you want to close. And it's another way of looking at the C we find is good as well, is to think of the C as commitment. Because often you may be getting to the end of that particular conversation, but there's still steps to take before the person can actually buy. So you want to have a commitment to the next step. So is it the next meeting? Is it some information that they need to bring you? Is it information that you need to provide? Other people that need to be involved, et cetera, et cetera. Then once the sale is made, then there's follow-up. And so then that's really proving that you do what you say you're going to do, and actually doing the work. And we can cycle all the way through this and have many aiding conversations in the relationship with our customers. And you'll see that in terms of the shading, that the dark blue is how much time you as a salesperson or service provider spend talking, and how much time you spend listening, or how much time the customer spends talking. And this is often a huge relief to a lot of salespeople who think that they need to have the gift of the gab, or they have to be extremely extroverted in order to be a successful salesperson. Really, the best social trait for a salesperson is to be a really good listener. And so we talk about listening people into buying. So you ask the right questions, you get the customer thinking, you get the customer talking, and between you form a relationship and a partnership. And so you can see that the interview takes the longest time in terms of the time frame. So the bars represent the percentage of time. And so the more time you can spend in the interview, the better. Whatever is appropriate also for the customer. And often we find that if you get to the negotiation and there's some objections, or the customer's expressing concern, you just circle back to the interview and find out, let's clarify, what are your concerns before I react or respond. Okay, so that's a little shorthand in terms of a sales process that we find works very, very well. So you may have your own sales process. You may be interested in the aiding process. And there's obviously a lot of detail into how do you interview, what questions do you ask. There's a structure within the interview. And so there are actions to take within each of those steps to really refine it. Now, also what we find is that personalities are of real intrigue to people. And when we run our training, when we do our graduation event, predominantly people actually talk about the personality styles and how helpful they found it in terms of giving them confidence to deal with different people. So we use a 4-quadrant model, and even though I'm trained as a psychologist and I can interpret complex psychological profiles, we find that 4 quadrants is the easiest way for people to be able to register certain traits that people have, so that in the moment they can learn to adapt their style to develop greater rapport. So there's a couple of bullet points, 3 bullet points there that you can build up as well, Jamie, thank you. So you may have done like DISC is quite a well-known 4-quadrant style. There's another one which is about birds, and so you have owls and peacocks and things. There's all sorts of variations. So our one is the same as the others. It's measuring the same things, but we just use what we call internally recognizable terms. So when you say somebody is a talker, then you know that they're chatty and sociable. So they're really easy to remember. And we have a really quick little checklist that people can go through to work out what somebody's style is, rather than having to go through a personality assessment as such. So very quickly, I'm going to talk about the 4 styles. It's a quick overview in relation to you as a salesperson, and then how you adapt to people. So if we go back, Jamie, to the first one, and we'll flick backwards and forwards actually. So if we go back to the circle diagram, thank you. Then let's just start off with talker. So as a salesperson, a talker, you get a lot of salespeople who are talker styles. And we're talking about dominant styles, by the way, because everybody is a mix. And so you can have a secondary style that actually plays a lot in terms of your personality. So as I'm going through this, think about yourself, and then also think about people that you know. It can be people in your family, your friends, and also people in your team. So talkers are people-oriented. They like recognition for who they are. They're often outgoing. They often wear bright clothes. They're quick to talk, and they like you to ask about their social life and so on. So people who are talkers enjoy selling. And so when they are selling to a talker style, now we can flick back, sorry, Jamie, to the next one. So you can see there under the column of talkers, when you're dealing with a talker, they like you to speak with enthusiasm. They like you to be fast and spontaneous and fun. They like you to connect personally. and to focus on socializing with them and developing a relationship with them. They're quite creative and often have lots of ideas that they want you to recognize. They like you to be stimulating in your conversation. And they like to know what other people have bought. So because they're people oriented, so testimonials work well in terms of validation. And they like you to be enthusiastic, and their communication sounds a little bit over the top, but dramatic or animated is how they like you to be. All right, Jamie, we can flick back to the circle and challenging you there with going backwards and forwards. So the doer, they also like to recognition, but they are results oriented. So they like to be recognized for their achievements and their results. So you still get doers as salespeople, but they're very achievement driven. And so they like targets, they like goals. They can be quite forceful in terms of being a salesperson. They can be a little bit intimidating for a lot of customers, and because of that drive. And they can be a little bit, as a team member, a little bit quick to flare up because they're impatient, and they're always pressed for time. So they're do in terms of their main behavior. So again, if you go back to how to adapt to them, that chart. So when you're selling to somebody who is a doer, and you can recognize that they're more of a success-oriented person, that they're impatient, that they're short on time, then they want you to speak with conviction, because they usually do. They like your pace to be quick and decisive, because they are quick and decisive. They're great decision makers. They're quick decision makers. They might make a wrong decision though, so they need you often to caution them in their decision making and to make sure that they're seeing all sides of the solution. And they want you to use their time to be very efficient. So don't provide them with a huge amount of information. Give them the executive summary or the bullet points. Focus on results that they're going to get and results that other people have got. But those other people need to be notable people that they admire. Support their goals, get to the point, give proof of results, be businesslike, and be concise. So you can see it's quite different to the talker. So then let's look at the supporter, who shares a similar thing in that they are also people-oriented, but they have a need for security, so they're risk-averse. So they're very sensitive people, they're very loyal people. They make good salespeople in that they are great listeners, they're the best listeners. They make amazing customer service people because they love to help people. But because they are sensitive and because of that need to avoid risk, they can find selling a little bit difficult. They can find prospecting difficult. So they really appreciate good coaching and a lot of positive reinforcement as a salesperson. And then if you go to how to adapt to a supporter customer, then they are looking for trust. So they want you to be warm and friendly, to be slower, to be relaxed with them, to spend time in building trust, make it safe for them to make this decision, show them the process about what's worked well in the past so that they can trust historic aspects of your products and services, whereas the doer is more inclined to what's new and let's take a risk. Support their feelings, be aware that they are very sensitive. They want you to be pleasant. They do not like any conflict. Give them assurance, be easygoing and be friendly and be tolerant. So they will say, I just need time to think about it. And they literally do need time to think about it. And if you force them, then they'll back away and they'll disappear and you wonder why. And then lastly, the controller is they need results as well, but also they're risk averse. So they, as a salesperson, they're not so inclined to sell. They like analyzing and looking at facts and figures, and they don't really enjoy meeting a whole lot of new people. So if you look at how to adapt to a controller, when you're selling to a controller, often controllers make people very uncomfortable as a customer because they like you to be accurate. They like you to speak with facts and data because that's the way that their brain works. And if you're a talker, people-oriented person, you're not that necessarily that way inclined. So think about providing accurate information, a lot of proof and evidence, detail. They will read all the research. And be serious. The more animated and excitable you are, the more that you'll turn them off, and be very detailed as mentioned. So you can see that there are very different styles in terms of you as a salesperson, your individual salespeople, and the customers that they're going to be dealing with. But if we understand that there are some dominant traits and that we can recognize those and then we can adapt to them, and once we adapt to them, then we can be really surprised at how well we can develop rapport with different people. And a very quick anecdote, one of the people that we had on our program, they ended up coaching a colleague who was getting frustrated that their business owner wasn't replying to her emails. And he said, well, let me have a look at your emails. And she was a talker and she's writing these very long-winded, chatty sort of emails. And he said, you're dealing with a doer. Put it in bullet points and be very direct about what you want from him. And she got a response that same day. So it makes a real difference being able to talk the talk and speak the language that other people can relate to rather than how you may relate to people naturally. Right, and so then mental barriers. This is obviously a very big topic that we're only going to be covering in a few minutes. And we find that a good way of understanding mental barriers is to choose core barriers that are going to impact people when it comes to selling. And so we talk about congruence, which is another word for bringing things into alignment. And the opposite is cognitive dissonance, which means mental conflict. And if we have a mental conflict around something, then it's like a short circuit in our energy. You can build that right up, Jamie. There's lots of arrows and things. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So what this diagram shows is really in a person's mind, what's going on when it comes to selling. And so we say that, first of all, you look at your values and having strong, clear values and that's why we focus on integrity, because we say integrity is doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. But that's for your customer, but also for yourself and also for your company. So you need to make sure that you've got a very good supportive environment around your salespeople so that what they're being asked to do does align with their values. And then the most important thing secondarily to values is their view of selling. So we say, when you say, what's your definition of service? Well, people say, oh, it's being helpful and makes me feel good. And then you say, what's your definition of selling? And they'll say, oh, manipulative, being uncomfortable, being pushy, etc. So we say selling is identifying and filling needs people have and creating value for them, which is actually the same definition as service. So we see selling as service. Selling is helping. Selling is solving people's problems. It aligns with your values and it aligns with your customers' values. So having that belief will then drive particular behavior, because once you have that belief, then you'll be genuinely interested in understanding your customers' needs and concerns. So some of the other barriers are our confidence. So that's where coaching is really important. We need a simple process for selling, not a complicated one. And we need managers to coach people to keep building their confidence. People need to believe and understand your unique selling points and why people buy from you. They may be buying from you because you do good community work, and that means more to them than price. And people need to be committed to the activities, which tends to be an outcome of the others, because we do need to contact a lot of people. It is an interactive process selling, and there are activities that are required. So if we can bring these all into alignment, then we find that we release people's energy or their achievement drive, and their productivity lifts, and they are so much happier. A quick example is a person who came on one of our programs, and if things didn't go well, if they didn't lift their performance, then they were basically going to lose their job. After going through the program and focusing on the customer's needs and getting a renewed sense of purpose, they ended up being the top performer. And so this really can change people. Jamie, if you just want to spend like a second on each of the other slides, because they don't really need, it's really just a visual to show that values and ethics are really important when it comes to selling. So selling is not something that you do to people, it's something that you do for them. And just glancing at a few of these, you can see that you need a foundation of good values and ethics to build long-term relationships with your clients and for your salespeople to feel good about selling and confident about selling. Also, when it comes to learning, people forget most of what they hear the first time. And so we call it the forgetting curve. And so the next slide just shows that you need sustainment over time. So that's why we hold people in a weekly reinforcement process going over 8 weeks, and the 8 weeks absolutely flies by. And that's where the real change takes place. And it's helpful as well if you've got online material now with, as you know, Auckland is found back in lockdown. And so life can continue on if you've got your material online so that you can train, you can do blended learning where you've got digital material. We still like to facilitate. We don't really like online only training unless it's something like product training where people can literally learn it intellectually. But when you're dealing with values and beliefs and attitudes, you really need to be facilitated through a process. And coaching is important. So we've got coaching support, and we really strongly recommend that if you are a business owner or leader, that you invest time doing weekly one-on-one coaching with people, or at least monthly, the absolute minimum monthly. And just to let you know that we're going to run an open program for integrity selling at the end of March. So 23, 24 March, we do 2 half days, and then we go into the weekly follow-ups after that. So if you're interested at all, then if you'd like to get hold of Jamie, and we can get some more information to you. All right, so that's a very quick overview of hopefully some ideas and concepts and philosophies around selling that can help in your sales process and increasing revenue and helping your customers more.